decided we were going to give up magic. I was probably going to go back to work in the sweatshop, and Bess was going to keep selling toothpaste. But then I had one last contract to do in Minneapolis. And I told them I don't even want to go. And they said, "You are under contract. If you don't, then you'll have to pay us the money," which I didn't have. So I was almost forced, in a way. So in Milwaukee, a wonderful thing happened. There just happened to be a man named Martin Beck who was in the crowd that night. Now, having worked with lots in the past, I had a small part of my act, which was a handcuff escape. And Mr. Beck thought that was the way to go. It was a wonderful presentation piece. I didn't think it would hold an audience for very long, but he did. And he sent me a telegram after seeing that show. We were back in New York, and that telegram changed my life again, forever. It read something like this. Houdini, will contract you to Tony Pastor's, which was one of the greatest vaudeville stages of its time. Will contract you for the month of March. Will contract you for $60 a week. That was the most important telegram I had ever received. Tony Pastor's. Now, that was a great place to be, but one of the most important things about being on a vaudeville stage was where you were on the bill. Well, when we started out, we were opening the second act, which was about the time everybody was getting into their seats. I remember the first night we did our show, and the Dancing Poodles came out after us and received way more applaud than we did. But after a few shows, the handcuff escape seemed to be one of the better keys. And then I started realizing just how important escape was. It was a time of poverty. People were oppressed. Segregation, racism. We had to escape. So to show people the importance of escape, with the help of my lovely assistant, these are British feathers used in India. These are American feathers used at Alcatraz. These poor soul Pakistanis are torture devices in their own. And our modern cuffs that are pick-proof. How about a little music, maestro? Once I realized just how wonderful the escape could be, I began a challenge, offering $1,000 to anyone who could restrain me. In 1904, Bess and I were on a tour of England. In London's most popular newspaper, the Illustrated Daily Mirror, had a challenge for me. They had a set of handcuffs that a man spent 4 years working on. And they would open, but only with the key. And the key was 6 inches long. Hard to hide in your hat. Now, I had what I called the ghost house, which was a little canvas closet. And in the ghost house, I had the tools that I needed for most handcuffs. A lot of handcuffs, a lot of locks, if you hit them just in the right way, you can break them open. So I accepted the challenge. I got to the theater. I inspected the handcuffs and they placed them on me, and they were beautiful. A tube with a single lock at the end. An amazing bit of craftsmanship. After they placed them on me, I started the challenge. I went in the ghost house. And as I went in the ghost house, I went and I couldn't really see very well. And in front of an audience of 4,000, I came back out to inspect the cuffs, and a woman in the crowd said, "Look, he's out!" But it was a little premature. I went back in the ghost house, and those were very, very well-made cuffs. After struggling for a good 40 minutes, I was burning up. I was sweating profusely, and I came out with a simple request: can you just take it off for a minute so I can take this coat off? The manager said no. He was afraid if he took them off that I would see how to do it, and he wouldn't let me. So, at that point, I happened to have a knife in my pocket, and I pulled it out, very difficult. I got the knife open, and I just started cutting. And I cut my jacket into shreds. And finally, when I got it ripped all the way apart and threw it on the ground, and I raised the handcuffs in the air, and the crowd went wild. Well, it wasn't long after I went back in that house and worked to try to get those cuffs off. And at one point I thought I had them, but they weren't coming off very easily. After an hour, Bess was worried. So she came into the ghost house and gave me a kiss. And a lot of people think that it was that kiss was the way that I got out. But it would be hard to pass a 6-inch key with a simple kiss. Interestingly, the newspaper the next day wrote down that that was the only possibility for my escape, was Bess bringing me the key with a kiss. Well, no one noticed when my assistant Tom brought me a glass of water. And you can imagine a glass of water might be an easy place to hide a 6-inch key. As I finished and got out, came out victorious. Bloody, sweating, and the entire crowd roared. As I came to the crowd, they went wild. There was only a handful of 4,000. There was only maybe a couple hundred left after an hour and 20 minutes. But those 100 were definitely fans of me. They came to the front of the crowd, they came to the front of the stage, and I grabbed them, they hugged me, and all of a sudden they were all raising me and carrying me all over through the theater, and when they brought me back to the edge, I felt so fantastic, but then there was this fear, this hit, this thought, and I collapsed to my knees, and I began to weep, and I had to think, and I thought about it. What an escape. But what if I hadn't got out? What if I hadn't got out? But I did. At that point, escape was the most wonderful thing that I could do. And for a long time, the different escapes could hold a crowd for an hour, could bring in thousands and thousands. But eventually, as all people do, they began to get bored. And even Martin Beck said, you need to do something else. You need to make it more dangerous. Set the box on fire. I said, Mr. Beck, even you know, none of the venues, not even Tony Pastors will allow fire. But he was on to something. And I began to contemplate that most of the time, people don't burn to death. They asphyxiate. They can't breathe. And that's when it hit me. There is a similarity between fire and water. So tonight, I'm going to ask each of you to join me in a little experiment, a little journey into a nightmare, a little walk into terror. Many times it was called the milk can escape, but I have different varieties. Tonight it is the whiskey barrel escape. And with the help of my assistants, I will take you into a deep of claustrophobia,